So, the main reason that I picked this topic was because Arizona is the second state after Oklahoma that has the largest population of Native Americans in their public schools. In 2017, Native American students comprised about 5% of grades 3 through 12. And in Arizona, there are only about six Bureau of Indian Education in of a Bureau of Indian Education schools in Arizona, two tribally controlled schools. And even though natives only make up 5% of our public schools, they statistically have the highest dropout rates, the lowest test scores, the highest suicide rates, and some of the highest substance abuse rates. These students are obviously being failed by our schools, and we need to figure out how to fix that. So as of now, to understand much of the issues Native American students are facing, we have to go back in time. As of now, the United States government has a trust relationship with the Indian tribes, which is based on treaties, court decisions, and executive orders, and etc. Basically, this means that the U.S. government has moral obligations to the tribes of the highest responsibility. We are supposed to treat them good, and that hasn't always been the case. Historically, the government has passed federal policies that have been troubling and destructive to Native communities. These policies have caused severe inequality and loss of tribal tradition and cultures. The first boarding school for Native students was opened in 1754. It wasn't until the 1800s that the U.S. government started to systematically send Native Americans to off-reservation boarding schools. In 1819, the Civilization Fund was started by the government. This was a fund that, quote-unquote, awarded to religious franchises who converted tribes for education and for Euro-American ways. Richard Pratt was the first to found these quote-unquote schools for civilizations. He based it off of an education program he started in a native prison during the war, which should give you a good idea of just how awesome this curriculum was. He is also famous for saying, "Kill the Indian, save the man." These schools were a genocide of tribal culture. They endeavored to eradicate the language, traditions, and religion of the native students. The schools erased any association the students had to their tribes. It wasn't until the 1920s when the government gave back tribal sovereignty for education to the tribes. So reservation day schools were open for their children, but in 1944 this was ended and we went back to the boarding schools. Policies have gotten better over the years. These policies came about after the Kennedy Report, which was a scathing to the policies up until that point. It pointed out coercive assimilation being the dominant policy. The new policies provided tribal government, communities, and families opportunities to influence the direction of their children's futures. However, even with the new policies, 22% of natives 25 and older have not finished high school, and only 13% of them have completed a bachelor's degree or higher. That's in comparison to the 29% of the general population. Also, native students are 2.5 times more likely to drop out of school, and leaving school reverberates throughout their life. Native children are more likely to grow up in poverty, suffer severe health problems, and face obstacles when it comes to educational opportunities. 92% of Native children go to public school. That means only 8% go to federally funded Bureau of Indian Education schools. There are 63 reservations in 23 states. This first table shows the statistics of Native students in public schools in Arizona. High-density schools are where 25% or more of the student body is Native American. and low density is 25% less or less. So about 6% of Arizona schools are considered high density. For years now, specialists have noticed that Native students are being classified as SPED more than other races. Many think this has more to do with a misunderstanding of behavior and emotion. Native students are 70% more likely to be identified of students with emotional disturbance. Native students are also overly represented in school discipline systems. Studies show that they are disproportionately suspended and expelled. Think like this. They represent less than 1% of student population, and yet they comprise about 2% of out-of-school suspensions and 3% of expulsions. Another factor to take into account is that Native students are 2.5 times more likely to be held back in kindergarten than white kindergarten students are. It starts very young, which means we should start very quickly to try and fix this. This all stems back to historically lack of educational opportunities for Native students, and we have to try and get that to be better. Native students also have a lack of higher subjects that they get to in high school. Just compare these level of mathematics for Native students compared to other students. The highest for all students is Algebra 2, while the highest for Native students is none of these. And it would not be unreasonable to assume that that level is lower than Algebra 2. The most worrying aspect researchers have discovered with the Native youth is their poor mental and physical health. Our Native American youth are committing suicide at a much higher rate than others. A lot factor into this. As stated before, many live in poverty. They are also at risk of starting to abuse alcohol and drugs at a younger age. Domestic violence is also fairly prevalent in their communities, unfortunately, and all of this can be contributing to this epidemic. From ages 12 to 17, Native youth have the highest lifetime prevalence of major depressive episodes. That is not good at all. Another health issue running rampant in Native youth is type 2 diabetes. The prevalence of diabetes in our Native students is nearly 3 times higher than the national average. In southern Arizona, 24% of Native youth have type 2 diabetes. All right, let's take a breather. I just threw a lot at you guys, and almost none of it was good. But I promise that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I'm going to quickly discuss why Native youth might be suffering as they are and what we can do to try and combat that. So there's a continued lack of genuine tribal control, which means there's basically no talk between schools and the tribes. In Maricopa, where basically all the Native kids go to public schools, there's no discussion between the school district and the tribal school. States aren't required to do that or encouraged to do it anyway. There's a lack of comprehensive student support. Students are lacking funding, which means we're getting less counselors to help our students. Another big issue that's happening is they're getting rid of registered nurses and instead hiring medical assistants who actually legally can't even care for diabetic students. They can't give them insulin, which Native students, as I've stated, this is a very prevalent health issue for them, and so this automatically is not good. They have challenges in recruiting and retaining highly efficient staff. This isn't surprising. We all know about the teacher shortage. The only thing I can hope is that we believe that we can do better for our students by staying. There's a lack of Native language and culture in the school. I mean, this stems back all the way to when we first started the boarding schools. There is about 100 different languages these students could be speaking, and none of it's incorporated into the school. The culture also, a lot of the schools don't have a Native culture club that they can go to. This is all something that we need to think about. And unsurprisingly, insufficient funds is a huge problem. So here are my recommendations. Get in touch with the tribe. Work with the tribe. Try to figure out what they think might be best for their students and how you can help. Also, maybe have some of them come to the class. Teach your students about their culture. Get to know the students. This is something we all know about. Get to know them culturally. Get to know about their personal interests. Just think, they have such a high suicide rate. If they believe that they can confide in you, could be the first step in combating that. Let's please do this. Work with diverse learning styles. No one student is the same. This has been said over again. Studies have shown, however, that Native students tend to be field-dependent learners, which means they like a lot of collaboration. They are also intrinsic motivated, which means that we need to relate the information personally to them and their interest. Make it diverse, make it fun, use visuals. Give them a choice in how and what they learn. They know themselves a bit better than you at this point. Increase the wait time. Basically, just give them more time to answer your question. Just because they don't answer it right away, it doesn't mean they don't know it. These kids, they're thinking, there's a lot going on in their head. They're probably trying to vocalize their answer. Give them the time to do that. Don't just immediately think that they have failed at giving you the answer. Provide multicultural curriculum. This is obvious. We have such a diverse student body in our schools. That curriculum should mirror that. Culturally responsive teaching. Most Native students are taught by non-Native teachers. There's nothing that we can do about that except for be the best teachers that we can be, and maybe they themselves will want to grow up to be teachers, and we can help with that problem. But basically, just try to culturally understand them. They have one of the least understood cultures in our school. A lot of that has to do with what we are taught in public schools. Try to combat that. These are my references. I found a lot of federal reports about these issues. Like I said, these are issues that have been prevalent for a while, and not much has changed. It all starts in the classroom. That's where most of our students spend their time outside of the house. Let's try to make it so when they go in, we can do our best for these students. Thank you.